Hey folks, it's Mike Dobbs, Cine-Geezer, and we've got some stuff. I've got some stuff to show you tonight. And look what Cine-Geezer Bassett's got.
I've got these stuff.
The stuff. By the way, folks,
Enough is never enough.
it's an outstanding motion picture directed by a true Hollywood maverick, Larry Cohen. In fact, I don't think he would even agree with the word Hollywood being used. He's a New York filmmaker.
New York filmmaker. Yeah,
And,
exactly.
and he freaking loved being a New York filmmaker.
You know, I saw the stuff in the theater with my first wife, Marlene, and it did not play well theatrically. In fact, we ducked into a neighboring theater to catch the end of another movie because a friend that we went with said, "I have to see something that feels like a real movie." I love this stuff, but you and
I
we're cine-geezers. We're
I
not
I
normal.
I love this stuff. I don't
Yeah.
believe I saw it until it came out on videotape, but I immediately thought, what a great satire about consumerism, what a great satire about, we're going to ingest things that we really don't know what's in them. Until of course they um make us like flip our necks all the way back and they exit our body.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So this is what I was holding up for you fellow cine-geezers. This is a promotional item that was distributed to video stores by New World Pictures when the stuff came out on VHS. And this is the kind of tchotchke that used to be used to promote home video back in the days of video stores, which some of you probably remember fondly. Some of us worked in video stores. I was a shareholder, co-owner, um, and eventually became a co-manager and buyer for First Run Video in Southern Vermont. And Mike, you used to take me on a circuit of video stores all around your neck of the woods.
So I think that people should know that the theme of our discussion tonight is about the home video industry. We're going to tell you a little bit about the VSDA, which we'll explain in a moment, and also just how home video worked in terms of getting movies to people. And yes, Steve used to come down from the mountains of madness in Vermont down here to the city of First, Springfield. And I had all these routes because there were so many video stores. And when they felt that a videotape had reached its potential in terms of rentals, they'd slap a price ticket on it and maybe put it in a box or put it in a bin. There we go, mistress of the
Yeah,
apes.
I bought this on one of our trips. I believe this was in one of the video stores you used to take me to on the outskirts of West Springfield. And that's also where I picked up goodies like Crocodile. And, you never knew what you'd find in those sales, Space Angel.
Now, do you remember there was some sort of obscure cannibal movie that you really wanted, and I took you to this video store, and it was still on the rental shelf.
Yeah, they would not sell it to me.
And eventually, if I remember correctly, you did get it because eventually they took it off the rental shelf and put it in the sales area.
It
Do
was
you remember
it
that?
was Eaten Alive, which was on video as the Emerald Jungle.
Okay.
And it was sort of a K-Tel greatest hits of Italian cannibal movies. It had film clips from three or four of the prior Italian cannibal movies, and I had never seen it. And of course, when you would take me to those video shops, I didn't have a membership. You didn't have a membership, so it's not like I could rent it to watch it. And in a lot of cases, it was cheaper to just wait and buy them out of the sale bin. I mean, I think I paid $5 for the now rare Bill Rebane movie, The Capture of Bigfoot.
Bill
And
Rebane, the sign of excellence.
yeah, yeah, and I paid 750 for Yeti, the Canadian Italian Bigfoot movie. Um, So yeah, I mean, and that was also in the day when most of the video stores would have um, you didn't have access to the tape. The tape was behind the counter. You would bring the box up or the
Yep.
sleeve up, and but in the case of these sales bins, the tape had already been processed. It was in the box. It was just sitting there with a price tag on it, waiting to be given a new home.
Yes. Yes. And you and I certainly gave a lot of them new homes.
I still have a lot of them, as you all can tell. In fact, I saved to share with Cine-Geezers the kind of stuff that we used to die for is when we would stumble on not one, not two, but like every Val Luton film for sale on video. I Walked with a Zombie, and of course the everlasting Cat People and Curse of the Cat People. All of these from Nostalgia Merchant, which was one of those early VHS labels. We were buying, I think the most you and I, well, the most we paid was that basement video collector shop that was in Holyoke.
Oh, yes. Astro Video.
Astro Video.
Yeah.
But most of these were very inexpensive to us, buying them used. But these Nostalgia Merchant tapes were originally $40 to $60 for retailers. So
So,
we can talk about what the actual pricing model was for VHS and VHS rental. I've sort of jumped the gun by just leaping into this
no, no.
with props.
You
So,
can you can jump that gun. Um, you
what
know,
was your first video store experience, Mike?
I can tell you exactly what was the first VHS tape that I bought. Um, in Springfield, there was a mall, Eastfield Mall, no longer exists, and in the mall was a bookstore, Walden Books, no longer exists, and they had a spinner rack of of VHS tapes,
Star Video.
no, I don't think it was Star Video, it was another brand, and they had W.C. Fields' "It's a Gift."
Oh, wow.
They had a ton of public domain stuff, this company, but they also had some non-public domain licensed material. And I was absolutely thrilled. And if I remember, it wasn't cheap. It was $25, $30, $35. I mean, it was a little bit of investment. Um,
Did you have a VCR?
I got a VCR for my 30th birthday.
Wow, you were ahead of the game.
Um, got a VCR, and Mary's coworkers rented about 5 or 6 porno tapes um, at my birthday party to present them. And of course, I had to get the pornos back. I remember my father says, "You don't expect us to watch these." I said, "No, Dad, no, I don't expect to watch all these." Um, I'm not being a prude. It's just a weekend of porno is something that's a little bit beyond my aesthetic tolerance. However, so yeah, the first VCR was when I was 30 years old. The first tape was perhaps W.C. Fields' best film in many people's assessment.
My first purchase was
How does
Gorgo
that how does that not surprise me?
on VHS. In fact, the actual tape is over there, but I don't really want to walk away from our Cine-Geezer recording to grab it. But it is right over there. The first VHS tape I ever bought. We did not have a VCR yet, but when I saw Gorgo was being sold, and I think it was Star Video, so it was one of those
Yeah.
slow speed LP or SLP. I didn't care. I didn't know what that meant yet. Of course, it meant that really shitty quality, almost black and white version of a color film. Um, but I couldn't believe that the entire feature film was available for less than $20. I was going to take it home, and that was the first week I rented a VCR. And of course, when you rented a VCR, you had to get a membership, which in those days, we're talking early 80s, you had to pay for a membership. It was usually an annual fee and sometimes a significant fee. And I believe Where I rented from was a place called Del Padres in Greenfield, Massachusetts.
Oh yeah, Del Padre was also here in Springfield. They originally were a stereo and TV store.
Right. It was a huge stereo TV store in Greenfield, and they had the first selection I ever saw of rental VHS tapes. So I rented a VCR for a week, and that was my first rental binge as well.
May I
But the
offer
first thing
an
I popped
observation?
in was my copy of Gorgo, which I watched beginning to end, even though I was horribly disappointed in how miserable the quality of the tape was.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, may I offer the suggestion that you probably watched it several times during the course of your rental of the machine there.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, I've got, I like collecting Playboy magazines, and you go back and there'll be an ad talking about the revolutionary VCR, you know, and there was literally a handful of tapes, and they were like 80, $90 if they were um, straight from the studio, so to speak. I remember my brother bought Sound of Music. I'm pretty sure it was Sound of Music, and he paid $90 for it
Yeah,
because that
and
was the price.
The Disney tapes were all very expensive too, 89.95 retail. Um, it's interesting you mentioned Sound of Music because it was Fox and Disney that first tried to legally challenge the ability of video stores to rent tapes. Fox and Disney did not want the tapes to be rented, and they fought it in court, and they lost on the first sale doctrine. The first sale doctrine for laypersons is if Mike buys a car and after 3 years decides he wants to get a new vehicle, Mike has the right to sell his car to me with a transfer of title and whatever else is necessary from state to state. But let's say, Mike, you're driving a Subaru. Subaru can't step in and say, no, 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 no. That's our vehicle. You can't sell it. First sale doctrine here in America, North America, means if you buy something, you are allowed to make use of it. And first sale doctrine allowed that if a shop like Del Padres paid $90 retail for the Sound of Music, the way your brother did, um, they could then rent it, but they could not copy it. Transfer of copyright was illegal, but there was nothing that Fox could do ultimately to prevent a place like Del Padre and all the other video retailers that sprang up like mushrooms coast to coast, could not prevent them from renting video cassettes they bought. Of course, the studios quickly realized that it was a goose laying hundreds and thousands and millions of golden eggs. And they ultimately embraced the rental market as being the salvation for the studio system.
Right. And just one note, the Video Software Dealers Association, it was created in 1981 to lobby for what you just were talking about.
Right.
So there were enough video rental places in 1981 who were decided to band together with a trade group so that the trade group could lobby on their behalf. And of course, they were successful. The VSDA was very successful in helping to grow the home video market. Um, and it was like in a city like Springfield, about 155,000 people. You can attest to how many video stores that I dragged you to. I mean, it was like, hey, there's a corner store, and that corner store will sell you a gallon of milk, but they've got a separate room where they'll rent videotapes. I remember going into a car repair place in Indian Orchard, and they'd taken an unused room and turned it into a video rental
Oh,
place.
there you go. Yeah,
It
they
was
spring
like,
up everywhere. And the stores that didn't either want to get into the business or didn't have um, the revenue to get into the business would allow local rackers to come in, and they would simply set up 2 to 3 shelves somewhere in the store. There was a gentleman who was racking whose first name was Paul, who was based down in Massachusetts, and he used to rack stores all around our southern Vermont area. That back then I lived in Wilmington, Vermont, and I began to really frequent those stores that were racked, because what it meant is there was a constant rotation of old bizarre tapes. They would change out like every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks, and it was astonishing what I found in some of those
Right.
places.
Right.
Just stuff I've never seen again in many cases. Um, and sometimes most of the small businesses that got into the video, if they had a back closet or something, they would tend to favor adult videos because that was a big source of income, but they would have to keep them sequestered from the general public. They couldn't be visible to uh, anyone under 18. This also meant that some of the local grocery stores that racked, and I don't mean like chain grocery
Right.
stores like Price Chopper or anything, but I'm talking about like mom and pop little grocery stores. They would often rack, and if you wanted to see the adult tapes, they'd have a binder behind the counter
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
plastic sleeves with the folded up crushed boxes of the adult tapes that were available. And it was instant money for a lot of these small stores that, as grocery stores, were struggling in the 80s. The food prices were up, income was down. Those were lean years, and video really was a big boon for a lot of these small mom and pop shops. The independent retailers, though, sprang up everywhere. And like you say, Mike, used to take me on a circuit, I think, almost a dozen or more video stores.
I think we had two circuits. It was like a southern and a northern circuit.
Right, right.
Uh,
And where I was in Wilmington, Vermont, there was a video store in Wilmington that was opened by a couple, Deerfield Valley Video, and it was a very small establishment. They didn't have an adult room, but they had a binder that you would have to ask to see for the Triple X tapes. And their selection was limited. And in the early 80s, most stores only got one copy of any given movie. It didn't matter if it was Star Wars, they had one copy and you waited for that to come
right.
up. The whole
Right.
idea of multiple copies being available in the store didn't really take off until much later in the video store lifeline. Once there were chain video stores, Blockbuster, Hollywood Video, and so on, they were the ones who really goosed the whole idea of a major new release like Titanic, that they would have to have a wall or two walls of Titanic so that almost anyone who wanted to see it the week it was first available had a chance of taking it home, opening night or that first week that it was available. That was a new phenomenon, and I don't think that really took off until the 90s. Um,
So what you're talking about this financial boon to independent uh,
Retailers.
retailers.
Yeah.
Um, there was the other side of that business model. This created um, a real positive thing in the motion picture industry, and it did it on several ways. The first was, if you remember back to the pre-video days, you could see a movie, first run, then most communities would have a second run theater or a drive-in.
Yeah.
You could see that movie, second run, and then the movie sort of disappeared until it either appeared in a movie package on a local TV station or on a fledgling cable outfit like HBO.
Well, actually, there was another model too, which we should mention, which was the networks all had
Yes.
primetime movie nights. So NBC Saturday night at the movies, CBS,
Yep.
with Tuesday night at the movies. ABC had, so each of the networks would have a big movie night, and they would tend to premiere not just major films, but they were carrying studio product. You would
Right.
not see a Roger Corman film
No. No.
on any one of the networks. Um, And at a certain point in the late 60s, early 70s, all those networks began broadcasting made for TV movies,
Right.
which meant that they were no longer dependent on studio product.
And
Um,
I also think part of that was the changes in the industry where now you had R-rated pictures that
right,
the
right.
networks either had to cut or manipulate in some way to meet standards and practices. Well, when the video industry came in, suddenly first run, second run, TV, video. And the video industries not only provided money from video store owners buying tapes, it created an incentive for the owners to cull their collections and sell those tapes off. So a movie could have many lives and create many revenue streams.
Right.
Um, and it also allowed a number of things to happen. And one of those things that benefited a lot of people was the made for video movie. They came out, the video store people realized, the studios realized that an independently made movie that may never get real good theatrical distribution could still rack up a lot of profit for you at a video store if it had a good title, a good box art, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
One,
I remember seeing Blood Cult, which was one of the first direct to video horror films, and it didn't play anywhere except on VHS in your home theater. That was the only way to see Blood Cult when it was brand new. It did very well. In fact, the same label then paid Tom Savini to star in the next made for direct video horror film, The Ripper.
okay,
Um, and it just opened up the floodgates. Suddenly, there were all kinds of direct to video only available on VHS titles. They wouldn't announce that on the boxes. I very rarely saw box art that made it clear that something had not played theatrically. Let's not forget, I mean, producers like Roger Corman would open a film like Carnosaur in maybe 4 urban markets before putting it on video because he could claim
right,
accurately to retailers direct from the theater, right? But you're
exactly.
talking about something different altogether. You're talking about the films that were just made for VHS rental. And in short order, the studios caught on to this.
Yes.
And, by the time we see, a little sleeper film like Tremors, all the sequels were direct to video. Tremors 2, Tremors 3, those never played theatrically. Those were made to come out direct on video. And even the major Disney,
Yep.
they had a huge box office hit with Aladdin. It did millions of dollars of business on video, and they began producing direct to video sequels to Aladdin, to The Little Mermaid, and so on. So it was big business by the mid 1990s. I mean, entire franchises like The Land Before Time, that was an annual event that there would be a new Land Before Time cartoon feature for young renters. And I still have a lot of the campaign books where the campaign books were written, produced, and very slickly packaged for retailers like me, a buyer at a video store. And it was all about this is being marketed to grandparents and parents. They were making it very clear who our target audience was. The kids were the ones that were going to watch it, but we and the studio were going to be selling it to grandparents and parents. Oh, this is a Christmas seasonal item. Yeah, direct to video features were huge. Before they existed, though, Mike, I mean, part of why I held up some of those oddball titles I did, a film like The Capture of Bigfoot or Yeti. I mean, I never had a chance to see these in a theater or drive-in. Bill Rebane barely got Capture of Bigfoot out. When you and I would hit those video stores you took me to, we were seeing titles that simply wouldn't have been available to us otherwise.
Oh,
And they were
absolutely.
made for the video market. These labels were latching on to any print they could get their hands on of anything legally or illegally and put it out on video. And that really seeded the industry for the direct to video features you're talking about.
Right, right. And it's interesting to see how the studios could not bear to leave that money on the table. You know, when they, you think of a guy like Charlie Band and all of the direct-to-video movies he made, and you're going to have to help me with the title. There was a whole series that he did with a kid protagonist. It was some
Oh,
adventure.
Josh Kirby, the Time Traveler series,
Right.
Josh Kirby.
Now,
He also had Pre-Hysteria, which were all direct to video. Those were part of his package deal with Paramount Pictures. Paramount saw, oh, there's a lot of money in this. And Charlie Band came to them with a pitch that he could produce the kind of independent films. He's been doing independent films since the 1970s. I
yeah.
remember seeing Laser Blast, in a New Jersey theater when I was at the Joe Kubert School in the mid 70s. And it would keep popping up along with some other Charlie Band titles like Mansion of the Doomed with Richard Basehart. Charlie Band got in the video business very early. In fact, his label, MEDA, MEDA, which later became Media, MEDA doesn't roll off the tongue really. He licensed Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which was a huge hit for Charlie Band. He didn't make the film. He never had distributed it theatrically, but his video label made a fortune licensing the first video release of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And then he could piggyback his own films on the back of that success and build a very successful label. And he also did those weird compilations like the best of sex and violence, where it would be, he paid Cameron Mitchell or John Carradine.
That was the one with Carradine.
Right,
And
right.
I remember watching that and going, what are these things?
What is this? Yeah, right.
That was the first time I knew about Rudy Ray Moore because they had the trailers from Human Tornado and
Right,
Dolomite and all
right.
those. That's on DVD now, and they didn't, if you buy it, it's just a transfer of the videotape.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's no Blu-ray high quality
No.
picture or sound. It's like here's a dub off the VHS. And VHS tapes, we should stress to those who are not geezers listening to and watching us here on Cine-Geezers, these VHS tapes were pretty awful to watch. I mean, pan and scan, usually TV or 16 millimeter prints, or in the case of like the best of sex and violence or a lot of the direct to video features, they were just shooting them on, we're not even talking about high def video. They were just shooting them on videotape and putting them out there. And
I should add, if people seek out best of sex and violence, and it's a fairly amusing
oh
group
yeah,
of
yeah,
trailers.
yeah.
What's really amusing is that you have John Carradine propped up on a stool. He looks awful. He has terrible arthritis, which is very apparent. He's making these remarks that are supposed to be funny. And at the end of the tape, Keith and Robert Carradine come in to like pick up Dad.
Hey, Dad.
And it's so obvious that that's exactly what this is. It's like Dad needs a ride home, so two of his sons are going to pick him
Yeah,
up, bring
yeah.
him in and it's sort of endearing in a in a little bit, just a little bit endearing that they turn up. So I'm sure it's on their IMDb, and if people look for like Keith Carradine and says the best of sex and violence, I wonder what the hell was
What
that?
is this? Yeah, right. Exactly. It was a trailer reel essentially.
Yeah,
And these things, were in rental stores. The nature of the VHS market. You talked earlier about the VSDA, which our shop at First Run Video in Brattleboro, Vermont, was a member of. The Video Software Dealers Association, by the late 80s, early 90s, was huge. Their annual trade shows were in Las Vegas. Their semi-annual regional trade shows were in Atlantic City. I used to have to go to all of them, and celebrities were there. It was a big deal. Disney would um, present an entire stage production as a dinner theater event in the evenings for the retailers. Universal Studios, the first one I got to go to in Vegas was the year that Jurassic Park was hitting,
So
uh,
that was 1994, and
94. And,
and
Universal Studios set up an entire wing of the trade floor with all the actual props, the Stan Winston dinosaurs, the vehicles from Jurassic Park, so that as a retailer, if you had your retailer badge, you could walk through there. And it was like going into a display area at Universal Studios in Florida or California. I mean, it was really posh. And
so
you'd come out the other end of that with Universal, and there at a table would be Rudy Ray Moore with, the label that was releasing for the second time the Dolomite films. You never knew who and what you were going to see at these shows. Oh, there's Mary Kate and Ashley. There's Charlton Heston selling Bible tapes. There's Jerry Lewis doing a signing.
so
You
I
just never knew.
the VSDA, I went out there in 94 and 97. You were there in 94. I think you were there in 97.
I went at both times. Yep.
I went out there because at that point I had Animato, the Animation Fans magazine, and I thought this would be tremendous. I can go out, and I actually schmoozed with some of our advertisers, which was good. And then I got a lot of information for a piece that I reprinted in this book.
Escape.
So this is a book about how animation went from being considered a kid's medium to an adult medium. So I've got a list here. Where is the list of people that I spoke to and met? Okay, Billy West, the great voice actor. Cameron Diaz. That was really neat
Wow.
because there was a special screening of The Mask, which had not yet been released. So no
Right,
one
right.
knew
The
the
Jim
hell.
Carrey film based on the Dark Horse comic book. Yeah,
Right.
that was a huge film.
And no one knew who Cameron Diaz was. Um, I've got an autograph picture to make sure people know I'm not lying. But so Cameron Diaz, Ricky Lake, I think that was actually, yeah, Ricky Lake. Um,
That would have been the time with her appearance in John Waters' Crybaby, probably.
right. Matt Frewer,
Oh
great
yeah,
character
Max
actor.
Headroom.
Lance Hendrickson. Yeah. I, I I went up to Lance and I said, "Listen, I always look at your career like Boris Karloff's." And he looked at me and I said, "You do character parts in A pictures and you're a star in independent lower budget film." He says, "You're absolutely right." Very nice guy, by the way.
Yeah, yeah.
Leslie Nielsen, um, Marilyn Chambers,
Whoa.
yeah, Fred Williamson, Bill Hanna and Joe Barbera. That was
Wow.
interesting to meet them.
Oh wow.
Michelle Bauer. Uh,
Michelle Bauer. Now, there's an actress whose career really was built in direct-to-video features. She was in tons of direct-to-video features made
I
by
don't know,
directors like Fred Olen Ray,
and Jim Warnowski.
Jim
I
Warnowski.
don't think she ever appeared in a quote unquote big budget Hollywood type movie. I
No,
don't.
but she some of the films she did, like with Fred Olen Ray, may have played theatrically. I'd have to see a filmography in front of me to.
It was so the whole thing, folks, is this. Let's say you and your partner, maybe your wife, maybe your brother, you own a little video store at the corner in the neighborhood, and you realize that you could go to this convention in beautiful Las Vegas. And this convention was designed for one thing and one thing only. We're going to tell you what the new releases are, and we're ready to make deals. How many copies of Jurassic Park do you want? We're going to make a deal with you. And by the way, you're going to get to meet stars. Or, like in Jurassic Park's case, I remember going through that. It was a tremendous exhibit,
Oh, it was
like you said.
incredible. It was
And at
incredible.
the end of it was a big spinning wheel, and you spun it to see what tchotchke you brought home. And there was like leather Jurassic Park baseball jackets. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
all sorts. In fact, at the VSDA, they would give you a box that had a slit in it so you could slide in all of the tchotchkes and all of the literature that these guys were giving you. And it was designed to be mailed. Do you remember that?
Yeah. They'd ship it home for you, so you didn't have to try to cram it into your luggage and bring it back home,
So,
or pay an extra fee to bring a box with you home. So yeah,
so
that was they were set up amazing.
these these conventions were designed. It was not for the big boys. It was designed for the independents. And of course, part of the
Well, the
problem
big
is
boys were there, but the big boys already knew they that you were going to buy
right,
their
right,
product. The
right.
smaller labels and the ones who were launching new product from scratch, they were there because they could pitch directly to the retailers.
Yeah.
And when I say the smaller labels, I'm including stuff like, horror movies like the Leprechaun films. This is a little plastic figure that was available at one of those trade shows. It's a bendable. This was a way to make sure that when you went back to Brattleboro, Vermont, you would remember to buy Leprechaun when it came out on VHS. You know, this was not a big movie when it came out. This is that Russian science fiction horror film, Night Watch. There were two of them made. Um, and in the film, there's these horrific little spider leg dolls. And this came in a little cardboard box to remind you, oh, yeah, you need to carry Night Watch. And if you do, you can set up this little doll. It came with little legs in a packet, so you could put it together, turn it into the spider doll. It was amazing the stuff they would hand you.
And it was the whole idea of having, you mentioned some of these people, I mentioned some of these people. So, if you had never been around celebrities, mom and pop from their video stores, you turn left, you turn right, they're celebrities all over the place. And they were all eager to either shake your hand, do a selfie with you, or sign an autograph because they wanted you to be in that booth long enough to consider buying stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
And we're talking about, I dropped some names earlier, including Charlton Heston, Jerry Lewis. Christian Bale was an up and coming star at that point. He was at these shows. I remember signing booths with Christian Bale. T. Thomas C. Thomas Howell. How many
yep.
people out there remember C. Thomas Howell? Right. Um, he was so popular on the direct to video circuit that he would be at these shows. But he was not only acting in a lot of these direct to video films, he began directing his own feature films for this market. Santo was there one year in I can't remember if it was Vegas or Atlantic City, but Santo, right, the Mexican wrestler. There was a Spanish language VHS imprint that was going to launch Santo into the mainstream American market, and they had a number of Mexican wrestlers, one of whom either was the current iteration of Santo, or who knows, some other wrestler dressed as Santo. But here they were presenting this celebrity who was a fictional celebrity to the marketplace. It went on for almost 2 decades.
The
This
last one was in
world of video.
2006. The
The
last,
last one was 2006.
so
I
they,
left
they
the
went
market
from about 1981 to 2006.
and I left the market in March of 2005. I began teaching at the Center for Cartoon Studies the summer of 2005. Before I left, our video store, First Run Video, won the 2002 Home Entertainment Retailer Award. And I still have the champagne's long gone, but I still have my award bottle for winning the 2002 Home Entertainment Retailer Award. Alan Goldstein got one of these. I got one of these. And I think our fellow manager, April Stage, went home with one. This one was sponsored by one of the video trade magazines. There were 3 or 4
Yep.
trade magazines for the video industry, one of which was Adult Video News, which I've kept some
AVN.
back
AVN.
issues of. Yeah, AVN. Actually, I also wanted to show off. This is one you may have given this to me, Mike. I can't remember when or how I acquired this.
I did give that to you.
This is for the Serpent in the Rainbow, and it's a little coffin.
Yep.
Don't bury me. I'm not dead. And inside this little coffin, ladies and gentlemen, is some genuine zombie powder. So
Yeah.
don't piss me off, Mike. A plastic spider and instructions for creating your own zombie.
And that was a Wes Craven major release, by the way.
Yeah, this was huge.
So,
This was, I believe, a Universal film.
yep.
Yeah, a Universal release. Uh,
I just found as a journalist that it was completely remarkable. I mean, I have to say, I've gone to a lot of trade shows as a journalist. Uh, Nothing was like the VSDA in terms of a trade show because number one, it was about show business and movies, but it was it was truly aggressive. It was like we want this to be an interactive experience. You're going to meet somebody that maybe you've always wanted to meet, and they're going to autograph something for you, and you're going to get maybe a really cool tchotchke. It was, and when I say aggressive, it was aggressive in a good way. This was not about passive marketing, you
no,
know.
no,
This
no, no.
this
This
was
was real showmanship.
yes. Can I tell you my Tony Curtis story?
Oh, please.
So, as a journalist, they gave me a big patch. Well, you saw me there. It was a big sort of thing that said press. So anyone you talked to knew exactly who you were, had your name on it. And they also would give you, there was a program telling you which celebrities were where and when. And I saw Tony Curtis. Now, I've loved Tony Curtis since I was a kid. I think he's a very underrated actor. I mean, I just rewatched Sweet Smell of Success, which I think is,
He's
uh,
incredible in the Boston Strangler.
yeah,
Talk about you go from the Vikings with Kirk Douglas to the Boston Strangler in
yeah,
1967. It's like, oh my God, what a range Curtis had.
he really did. So anyway, um, there was some small little video label, and they were producing a series of documentaries about Hollywood gossip stuff. And he was the host of this series on tape. And so I went to the booth, I went to the line. He was maybe 2 or 3 minutes late. I mean, not really late, but he apologized to people. And then every person that went in front of him, he made sure to address them by name. He would look at their name tag, and when it was my turn, he went, "Michael, I'm Tony Curtis. What can I do for you?" And I wanted to say, "Give me a hug, man. Give me a hug."
Yeah.
But he was very, very nice to everyone. Old school Hollywood, by the way. Old school.
People and a people person, you know?
He understood why he was there. So later on in the day, I'm talking to a stripper. I know my reputation precedes me. Talking to a stripper, and I said, "Where's the best strip club in Vegas?" So she told me one, and it was a great strip club. They had a magic act. It was more like burlesque, honestly.
Wow. Wow.
So I'm watching that. Okay, I had a good time. And on my way out, they had a VIP area, and I hear the clinking of glasses, and I hear giggle, giggle, giggle. I thought, I wonder who's in there. So I looked in, and there's my man, Tony Curtis, surrounded by about 5 or 6 dancers, and they're all having a great time. And I thought, yes, that's. But it was fascinating to me to see how these celebrities worked. And some of them, like Tony Curtis, when I talked to Leslie Nielsen, and as soon as I started mentioning certain movies that were outside of
Right, right, right. You weren't there because of Naked Gun. He
no,
was there
no,
because of Naked Gun, but you
right.
were there to talk to him about Forbidden
What's the Lovecraft movie that he did?
Dark Intruder.
I mentioned Dark Intruder, and he just like perked up really quickly,
Right.
and we started talking, and one of his handlers like put his hand on my shoulder
Time's up, buddy.
but to me, that was the appeal. So mom and pop comes to Vegas. They're having a good time. They're meeting these celebrities. They're getting autographs. They're getting
Hey, Hillbilly Bassett. I mean, I was nobody, in that market. I was just another retailer. Walking from one panel to another, I recognized Bill Condon, who nobody on that floor who was a retailer knew who Bill Condon was. He was there, I believe, because Gods and Monsters
I
had
was going to
just come
say,
out.
yeah.
And I've been a fan of his work since Strange Behavior, the Strange Behavior and Strange Invaders that he made with Michael Laughlin in New Zealand. And I was able to stop and talk to him for about 2 minutes. I recognized him. And like you said with Tony Curse, he glanced at my badge and said, "Yes, Steven, what can I do for you?" And I just said, "I just want you to know I really love your films." And they would look at you askance until I said, I really love Strange Behavior. It's Dead Kids, one of my favorite 80s films. And he lit right up, not out of ego, but like, wow, somebody here knows
Right.
what I've made, that same route between panels. Here comes Kevin Bacon, but he's not making eye contact with anybody. He's just like heading to where he's got to be. And you can see everybody, myself and my friend included, like, whoa, that's Kevin Bacon, yeah, they were amazing environments. We should also mention, Mike, the adult floor.
Well, this is now the X-rated part of this broadcast. Children, please leave the room.
Oh, we're not going to go there, are we?
um, so in 1994, President Bush, the first President Bush, was going to be speaking there. And I was told previous to 1984, they just integrated. So Universal Pictures may have been here, and then Vivid might be next to them.
Oh,
But
right.
because the
Vivid meaning one of the big adult triple X labels.
right.
Right.
So because the former president of the United States and his wife Barbara were going to walk the floor, they decided to put all the X stuff in a separate area so the president's handlers could make sure that he didn't see anything that would be potentially offensive to him. However, little Mikey Dobbs certainly went through it, and it was pretty astonishing. In fact, I've got a photo, and I will, when I edit all this, and I'm going to put in a whole bunch of photos, folks, so you can see some of the stuff. Like I've got a photo of the Jurassic Park stuff, so you can see what Steve and I are talking
Yeah,
about.
I met the young star of Tammy and the T-Rex at that show with you. Uh, and then she became a big star thanks to Starship Troopers and Wild Things and so on. So yeah.
I remember that they had a very elaborate. I was looking for the picture as I took a picture of a very elaborate booth with a Tyrannosaurus Rex bursting through
That yeah, it was the
the
head
wall.
of the creature.
Yeah. So clearly, as Steve and I have
It
established,
was Denise Richards, by the way. You could
yeah.
probably see the Cine-Geezers groping. What was her name?
And by the way, Tammy and the T-Rex had a whole second life when Vinegar Syndrome decided to do its deluxe buffing and polishing.
Well, no, they actually released the director's cut of it. I mean, that had been cut for the home video market into a teen-friendly teen comedy. And Vinegar Syndrome, one of our current favorite labels, uh, in their monthly release pattern, they seized on Tammy and the T-Rex, and they actually got one of our Center for Cartoon Studies alum to do a special slipcase for it. Chuck Forsman did a cartoon slipcase for the limited edition of Tammy and the T-Rex. But yeah, it was Denise Richards who was there.
By the way, it was one of the most 90s movies ever
Oh
made.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah,
The plot
yeah.
of it, just so you folks should want to watch it,
You,
is really simple. Teenage nice guy, mad scientist, puts brain of teenage nice guy into his Tyrannosaurus.
animatronic T-Rex,
Yep.
and it was Paul Walker, one of his first roles, long before Fast and Furious.
And it's one of these movies that you really wanted to hear the pitch to the investors,
Right, right.
because you don't know how it was actually made. It's it's fun in that sort of weird 90s kind of way. Let's get back to porn though.
Back to the porn.
Um, the porn room. Did you go in there? I can't
I
remember.
did. I every time I was with you, I would go in the porn room, and even the trade shows you weren't at, Mike, I would go into the triple X adult market room because it was always a real spectacle. You would see human beings unlike any other human beings you've ever laid eyes on. You would also see a lot of really pretty wonderful people who were there who made their living in the adult film industry. You would see devices that were terrifyingly David Cronenbergian. You would see strange tchotchkes. For instance, one year you and I were there, and this is when Beanie Babies were big. There was a husband and wife entrepreneur team who were there selling weenie babies, which were little adorable stuffed animals with gigantic sexual organs, male and female,
I
with
I
little yarn on them for the pubic hair.
I
You
still
never
have.
knew what would be on the adult floor or who would be on the adult floor.
So in 1997, the two celebs that were in the adult room was Drew Carey and Penn Jillette. And I really just wanted to talk to Penn Jillette,
Yeah,
and he very studiously avoided eye contact with anybody of course, again, I had the
you had the badge on. You were a
that said
retailer.
press.
Yeah,
So,
right.
um, yeah, I remember in 97, I was tasked with getting Ron Jeremy's autograph for a friend of a friend. And he wanted Ron Jeremy to know that Ron was his role model. And I told him that, and Ron Jeremy looked at me and he says, "Well, I feel sorry for him." I thought, "Ooh, okay, maybe Ron is having a moment of self-awareness here." But I remember there was at the 97 one, there was a very early 3D process where you wore these goggles.
Oh yeah, it was like a early virtual reality 3D sort of thing, right?
And it didn't, a lot of people just I see they were uncomfortable with it because it,
A lot of people were uncomfortable, period, in
there was
that
a lot,
section of
let's
the.
just say there was a lot of stuff coming at you,
Oh
okay?
yeah, 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 yeah. All
And
sorts of projectiles.
Steve and I know that in the great 3D movies of the 50s, it was usually like hands,
Ping pong balls,
or
arrows,
arrows. Yeah,
the
uh,
creature from the Black Lagoon.
right. But the X-rated rooms just didn't have the stars to sign autographs. They had an absolutely bewildering, and you have alluded to this, number of devices, sex toys. The one
I
that,
remember the glass dildos being particularly distressing to even ponder the existence of these things. Right? They were
so
either glass or fiberglass, but they
no,
looked
no,
like
that was that show in Atlantic City,
that was the VSDA in Atlantic City.
and
Right,
it
right.
was glass dildos made with Pyrex glass, and you turned a shade that I'd
I'm
never
I'm
seen.
starting to turn it right now. It's just
And the guy was a good salesman. He would take one of these things, and he was banging it on the table. You can't break it. And you put it in the dishwasher to clean it off. It's great. And
no wonder I was appalled.
I thought, oh, okay, all right, well, there must be a market for it. And it's like, folks, Steve has seen a lot of stuff in movies. I have never seen him react so strongly to something in our friendship since 1988. And you reacted very strongly. Now, the tchotchke I got from that Atlantic City show was a movie
Uh-oh.
poster for a film with Tara Patrick. I've never seen the film, but the film was full of CGI, and her character had a CGI robotic arm. And this was still at this point in the world of adult cinema that people were actually trying to make a movie, and that sometimes if they're willing to spend something like, you hire someone's nephew to do a CGI robotic arm for it. Um, but yeah, the X-rated rooms.
Well,
Just
and at that time, I mean, the adult video market had really exploded, and at that time, there were. I remember the beginning of it was probably in '97 was the first time I saw superhero movies in the adult room. You know, parodies of
right,
Batman and Robin or
right.
parodies of Superman, and they were elaborate productions. I've kept a couple of the DVDs of. There's two of them that have John Constantine, the character that I co-created for DC Comics, John Constantine, Hellblazer, is a supporting character in one of the Batman Triple X movies. And, you know, they're elaborately costumed, they have elaborate sets. Um, they're superhero movies with explicit Triple X sex activity going on in them. There were one of the award winners, it may have been the '94 show you and I were at, or it may have been one of the between the 2 years you went. There was a sex parody of Star Wars that won all sorts of awards. You know, the AVN Awards, Adult Video News Awards. A lot of money goes into those, and they're doing like prosthetics. You
Yeah,
know,
that's and again, part of this, there was still some theatrical exhibition of these things, but more importantly, it spoke to I'm going to get you to rent something because this looks like I spent money on it. And by the way, I'm making a parody of something that you already know. So
oh
you,
yeah, I mean one of our best rentals in our adult room in First Run Video. I bought all three in the series were Edward Penis Hands, which were spin-offs of Tim Burton's Edward Scissorhands. Only Edward has I said the title aloud. That director, by the way, a filmmaker named Paul Norman, specialized for a time in prosthetic triple X sex films. He did a version of what was the Steve Martin Roxanne,
yeah.
right? And so there was a triple X version of Roxanne with the prosthetic nose being very phallic. Paul Norman did a triple X remake of The Hunchback of Notre Dame, in which the hunchback has spinal protrusions that are so elaborate that women are humping his back. This is where the video market was going in some ways.
But
Um,
the bottom line with the X-rated stuff is that in many instances, it when Hollywood Video and the other big major chains came about, that was the last refuge of competition, of a competitive edge for a lot of the mom and pop
oh yeah.
independents. And it's not like, and I don't want to dwell on the idea that, mom and pop started, making more money off of porn than they did off of Disney.
Well, some did. I remember you taking me to a tobacco shop in Western Massachusetts, where the front of the shop was the tobacco shop, but two-thirds of it was one of the largest adult rooms I've ever been in. And that retailer was a member of our New England Video Retailers Association. Um, so there were some retailers who went whole hog with adult video being the be all and end all in terms of generating revenue. Most, though, just had a room. We had
Right.
a room, and Ken McAleer at Video Headquarters in Keene, who was probably the most brilliant video retailer I ever met or got to work with. Ken really cultivated a high-end adult video room, but it shrank over time. I mean, like you said, we will now leave our triple X portion of our program, ladies and gentlemen. Once Hollywood and Blockbuster were calling the shots, um, even the mom and pop stores that survived now had to compete with Blockbuster. You had to be able to rack multiple copies of major new releases. And new business models emerged. One of them, who we worked with at First Run Video, was a firm called Rent Track, who would lease titles to a video store. You can't afford 400 copies of Titanic when it's brand new. We will lease them to you, where Rent Track took a share of every rental. The video store kept a percentage of every rental. And incrementally, over the weeks, it was much like motion picture exhibition, which you can speak to, Mike, having managed the Tower Theater in Hadley, Mass. If a film like My Big Fat Greek Wedding becomes a surprise hit and is playing in independent theaters for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. Every week, the theater got to keep more of the box office.
Yep.
And Rent Track worked in that way, Mike, where, the first 4 weeks of a new title, the bulk of the rental went to Rent Track. But the longer the legs on a given video title, the more the store kept. And eventually you owned that tape. And
Right.
that meant you could also then sell that tape or whatever. Rent Track made it viable for a lot of mom and pop stores to stay in the game at the point where Blockbuster and Hollywood Video had completely turned the market on its head, where only the big chains could really afford to carry in-depth titles. And, if you're a little outfit and you're, say, on the outskirts of Springfield, you're competing with those
Yep.
Blockbuster videos to the point where if a customer comes in every week and they can't rent the new title from you, you've lost that customer. They're going to go to Blockbuster. And this is why a lot of the small shops had to find a way to compete with, these big chains that could bring in, I'm not exaggerating, hundreds of copies of that week's big hot movie,
Now,
whatever it was.
I remember distinctly a problem that you had along with many other people. It got to the point you would tell me when you were working at First Run Video that it was cheaper for you to drive to a Walmart and
Yes.
buy copies of First Run tapes than get them through your wholesaler, which put a whole nother market pressure on the independent video stores.
Yeah, I would also, we were a store that was competing. We had a Blockbuster in Brattleboro, which, by the way, I'm very proud to say we drove out of Brattleboro. We outcompeted Blockbuster Video. They left before First Run Video eventually closed. Um, yeah, sometimes it meant we were going to Walmart. We're not talking about the $90 videos. We're talking about the ones that were retail priced at $19 or $25. Sometimes I'd be with you and I would say, "Oh, Mike, I got to stop at the Walmart in Springfield to see if they've got copies of XYZ," because it was renting so well, we needed more copies than we had got, and I was looking to beef up our available stock. I also would do things like I used to go to a couple of Christian bookshops in New Hampshire and Massachusetts to buy some of the new Christian videos so that we had a little selection of that stuff, because at the time that the Left Behind book series were bestsellers, there was a rental market for that stuff. And the Omega Code was the first one of the Christian video features that broke through big. It scored at the theaters, and when it hit video, it was a big rental. And it was off the radar of most video stores. I remember Alan Goldstein saying, "Why are we carrying this?" And I'm like, "I'm going to get 16 of these." And, it was a strong renter for the first month. And it brought in some customers that we didn't normally see in the store. And your hope always was, how can I bring people in? Then they'll find something else they want. And most video stores, by the way, folks, were designed so that the new releases were on the back wall. You had to walk through the
Yep.
entire store. You had to walk by the library sections of the older titles to get to the new releases. And that was designed so that maybe something would catch your eye on the way to the film you wanted to take home that night, or the way back to the counter to rent the tape you were there for. And that's how most video stores were laid out. You would put the desirable retail product. This is how grocery stores are laid out, right? Dairy, meat, vegetables, those are against the outer walls of
Yep.
the store. And part of that is so that you'll walk by the other product on your way and impulse, "Oh, I guess I should also get some potato chips," or, "Oh God, I need some laundry detergent." Well, in the video store, it was, you're there to rent Titanic, but on your way back to the counter, "Oh, there's a Humphrey Bogart movie I haven't seen in a long time." Whatever it took. Yeah, we also got to the point, Mike, where there were certain titles that in the late '90s, Warner went direct. Right, we could no longer what prior to Warner Brothers going direct, where to buy the new Warner title, and I remember what the first title was. It was Oliver Stone's Any Given Sunday, the football movie with Al Pacino, and Warner announced the only way you could get this hot new Al Pacino film was to buy it direct from Warner Brothers. You couldn't get it from your normal video distributor, Star Video or Ingram, were one of the big distributors we worked with, and Baker and Taylor, who just went under, by the way. The book distributor Baker and Taylor, they were a real lifeline for us in the video market. And once Warner went direct, the threat was all the big studios were going to go that way. And they were toying with it. We had closed door meetings with Universal reps when Universal was toying with, Warner went direct, maybe we should. And I remember preparing and bringing in spreadsheets to show them, this isn't working. Week one, if we don't buy enough copies from Warner, we can't get more in time to catch the wave of rentals on week 2 and 3. If it's a hot new popular title, we lose those renters, and those are lost sales for the studios. So there was a lot of jockeying for power that was going on, and I won't bend your ear here about it, but I had lived through that already in the comic book market, right. The direct sale market, where going direct was the kiss of death. The market imploded practically overnight in a matter of a year. And I was afraid the same thing was going to happen to the video market. And more importantly, Ken McAleer and some of the high-end video retailers who had the ear of the studios were concerned that could go that way too.
Well, I want to return to the VSDAs for a moment because.
Oh yeah, I want to bring up one too. Go ahead, Mike.
So 95% of these celebrities seemed they got the program. They knew what they had to do. Turner, Ted Turner's operation, which at that point his company owned like all of the MGMs and
all the MGM, all the RKO. Yeah.
They brought in to sign autographs and to meet and greet Debbie Reynolds, June Allison, Sid Charisse, and Ed Miller.
Wow.
Wow, indeed. This was the 94 show. And I'm thinking, oh my God, all of that movie history sitting. And there were 2 lines. I just got in the line. And so my line was Sid Charisse and Ed Miller. I got very choked up because it was like, I would have loved to have talked to these people. But you realize that this was an opportunity to make a real statement. When I was in that line for the MGM actresses, there was a guy at the next booth over was NBA Films. And there was 2 guys talking, and they said, well, last year Michael Jordan was here. And but I didn't get his autograph. And I thought, oh, well, this is going to be one of those stories. And it wasn't. Jordan had to catch a flight. He left the autograph booth and then shook everyone's hand who was still in line to meet him and apologized. And I'm thinking,
wow,
he understands. He understands
right. He gets it.
How all of this is working. But there were 2 people that didn't understand. Jerry Lewis.
Oh God.
And your friend and boss or co-boss at the video store, Alan Goldstein, had a story ready because he grew up with Jerry Lewis's cousins. And Lewis was not looking at anyone.
Yeah.
He had a handler that would slide a photo in front of him. He would scrawl it, then slide it to another handler who would give it to you. And I remember that Alan tried to make this statement and just was like swept away.
Bun rushed out. And Jerry Lewis lost a fan that day.
Oh, yeah.
It lost more than one fan because a lot of retailers were watching this go down and like, whoa,
The other guy that I know pissed a lot of people off was Steven Segal. Apparently,
I want to hear this.
all I know is that there were very disgruntled video store owners wanting to get something from Steven Seagal because at that point he was legitimately
Yeah,
an action star,
yeah,
um, as opposed to what he is now. And he was late and he was not friendly, and people didn't want someone to be late because as I mentioned, they had a schedule. And if you're looking at this schedule, well, I want to go here, I want to go there.
right, right.
And if some guy is late, it sort of throws you all off. It was a real shame. But Steve, we got to tell the Roger Corman party
That's
story.
where I wanted to go. Now, what year was that again, Mike?
That was the 1994 Via.
Okay, and what that was, because I looked it up after you and I talked about it a couple of weeks ago. What that was there was a brand new New Horizons, which was Roger Corman's new company.
Right.
Roger Corman had built New World Pictures and sold it, and then built New Concord and sold it, and then had a new label. No, I think it was New Horizons and then New Concord.
Yes.
So New Horizons had a brand new Western, which nobody remembers, called Cheyenne Warrior, 1994. And Roger and his wife, Julie, rented, I remember it being a little Mexican restaurant. Is that your memory of it?
No, it was a room that was, as I remember, it was a room that was part of the Las Vegas Convention Center. Now
No,
that's
I remember it being a little restaurant that we actually had to go to.
yeah,
It
we
was
had a
not
yeah.
it was, and that and my and I'm just remembering it was a Western like setup,
And
you
the
know.
tchotchke was getting your Polaroid taken standing next to some Western scene. There
Right,
wasn't
right.
there wasn't an actor or actress or anybody. It was just go stand in front of like a saddle and stuff.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
It was appropriately Roger Corman cheap.
It was, but we got to hang out with some people we never would have met on the trade floor. I mean, I remember you and I getting to sit and chat with Don Stroud. And,
It was
this is
so
an actor that we'd grown up with. I mean, I'd seen him in Curtis Harrington's games. He really perked up when I asked him about von Richthofen and Brown. Like, he didn't think anybody remembered von Richthofen and Brown, which he was the star of.
he
He
was in the Buddy Holly story. He was
he
the
was in the Buddy
drummer
Holly
in the
story. You're right.
in the
He was big.
Crickets.
And his buddy Steve Railsback came and sat down with us, and Steve Railsback was primarily known at that time still for Helter Skelter, but he had made a big splash with The Stuntman, the
Yep.
Richard Rush movie that Peter O'Toole co-starred in, and they were happy to talk to you and me.
Don Stroud was so comfortable being there that he wasn't wearing his glass eye,
Right.
which I had to make sure I wasn't staring at it. It was just so freaking weird. But as you said, because we're a little bit older and we actually are movie fans and you could actually talk about titles, they were happy to chat with us. And then the other guy was Alex Hyde White.
Right. Who we have to explain was the first Mr. Fantastic of the big screen. Yes. Reed
Yes.
Richards.
Yeah, he was Mr. Fantastic in the infamous or famous Corman version of the Fantastic Four, which subsequently was buried. Our friend Marty Langford did his documentary Doomed, which tells the story perfectly. It's
Yeah.
by the way, I think it's up on Tubi. If you guys want to watch
Yeah,
it,
Doomed
you really
Doomed
should
is
watch it.
terrific, and it is the definitive account of what happened, both the making of the original Fantastic Four movie and the unmaking of the film, when Roger Corman basically was offered so much money that it was more affordable for him to just allow them to buy him out than to actually release the film.
And
Uh,
Alex, I remember talking to him, and he was pushing the film. He was proud of the film.
yeah, yeah.
I remember him comparing it to The Mask, saying that this is the kind of good family summer fun movie. That's how he was positioning it in his head, and which was accurate. I
I
mean,
think it was more fun than the Fantastic Four movies that have come out from the big studio. So
but here we are, two guys from New England, and we're in this cheap ass Roger Corman party. If I remember, there was no food, there was no tchotchke other than the Polaroid.
Right, exactly. Right,
Um, but we had the chance to hang out with three guys, two of which we actually knew who they were, and they seemed very happy to find a couple guys who knew who they were. And I'm
exactly.
not denigrating either of them or their careers,
Oh God, no. I mean, they had amazing careers,
uh, and we
and
were
they
just
also have
appreciative
to
of it.
talk about people they had worked with. Everyone was there who bothered to go to this event probably had some idea of who Roger Corman was, and but we we recognized a lot of people in that room. I mean, I think it
No,
was the most starstruck I've ever seen you and I together.
well, because on the VSDA floor, we understood what was going on. We
Right.
understood our roles, my role as a journalist, your role as a buyer. But at this party, it was far more relaxed. And I'm hoping that Corman paid these guys to be there, knowing Corman maybe not.
They might have gotten drinks. I do remember drinks.
Um, but hey, before we end this, I'll put these up somehow when I do the editing. One thing about the VSDA, it gave people an opportunity to get their movies out. So, for instance, here's a flyer.
Oh, Winter Beast. Oh my God, you have the ad slick.
Yep.
Oh,
So this is handed
I
to
need
me.
to trade you for that, Mike.
I'll give it to you. So here you go. This is given to me to basically say, hey, it's the Evil Dead meets Northern Exposure.
Yeah, right,
Seriously?
right. It's a Wendigo movie, basically. So,
But so here's another flyer that I kept. Um, okay, so it says, in the desert, the view's always better when the top is down.
what's the film?
The film is called The Great Bikini Off-Road Adventure.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Um, and does it have any stars in it? No. The whole idea is you don't need stars. You got a whole bunch of good-looking women in bikinis in the desert. Here's another one. I remember getting this and wondering, well, just who is this woman? It was a woman named Vivian Schilling,
Oh, the movie Soul Taker. I remember that film.
and she this was distributed by AIP Studios. Now that is not Sam
It's not
Arthur.
the American International
No,
Pictures you and
no,
I grew up with, but AIP was a popular direct to
no.
video label.
Some of Fred Olen Ray's movies were through.
Exactly. A lot of action films, a lot of erotic thrillers, which was a genre at that time.
So
Right.
again, I'm looking at this going, I almost, and I think maybe for the notes that I do for the show, I want to find out what happened to Vivian Schilling. It's like she put her heart and soul into this movie. Here's another one. A Boy His Bat Revenge.
Oh,
The
there we go.
the horror story. I don't know anything about this, but
I don't either, actually.
um, I've got their press release. It says most people don't even begin to tap the mystical intuition that couples share after years of partnership. But Alexander Johnson and his wife Elaine realized that intuition was one of the biggest advantages in making their first film, The Horror Story. The Unlikely Duo presents a horror story to video purchasers this week at the 1994 Video Software Dealers Association.
Wow.
So here's the whole thing. It's like, what is their story? Their story is they cobbled again some money, couple, and then they managed to get booth space at the VSDA and managed to
Boy, I
have.
remember that. That brings to mind a story that I should share, which is right when DVD was coming in. So this would be the end of the 90s, the very cusp of VHS going under, right? Where stores like ours began to buy more DVD copies of a title than VHS titles of copies of a title. And in the same wing of the VSDA show, the booths were opposite one another, and they were sizable booths. On the left, as you walk toward the back of the trade floor, were the Billy Jack films were being released as a box set. Tom Laughlin's Billy Jack films, right? And this was a big deal because Billy Jack had been released on VHS, but the other films had not. So they were there pushing their new product. And across the hall, across the corridor from them, was June Ormond and her son Tim Ormond. And they were launching their own video imprint, and they were ushering the imprint out with 4 of Ron and June Ormond's films, including Monster and the Stripper, the film that originally had been called The Exotic Ones. The folks at the Billy Jack booth at the end of the show were very happy. June looked like she'd have ripped your fucking face off if you tried to talk to her. They had not done well. Now, why had they not done well? Billy Jack was a known quantity. Ron and June Ormond, what is this, right? Billy Jack was already talking about putting their box set out on DVD as well. June Ormond and her son Tim were there with just VHS, and DVD was the new format at this show. That was like this sad spectacle of, here are 2 independent labels. This one's gonna make some money in this market, and the new marketplace of DVD. This one is dead in the water, right? And they put everything on the line to be at this show. Mike, we have no idea what it costs to have a booth at those shows.
No. Can you imagine what Universal paid for that Jurassic Park?
Oh, it had to have been hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more.
And of course, they were making money hand over fist on that movie.
Exactly.
We mentioned
now, they didn't have to have that display. Everyone was going to buy Jurassic Park anyway.
Yeah.
But
we mentioned Charlie Band. And I also have some of Charlie Band's sale material.
Oh, wow. You've got some of the, wow.
Okay, so here is, can we see that?
Now on DVD, Castle Freak, Vampire Journals.
A sense, Castle Freak, right?
Yeah.
Vampire Journals, Virtual Encounters, hubba hubba, and Assault of the Killer Bimbos. There we go.
There we go. There we go. And this was on his Full Moon label.
Right. Now, Charlie wanted to get some, this isn't porn, it's R-rated nudie stuff.
Oh, it was soft. Yeah, this was soft.
This is another label he had called Surrender Video.
Right.
And then, I mean, this gives you this is an example of something that you were talking about with him.
Mike, your camera has zoomed in so far that we're not seeing you.
Okay. All right. Yes, it does this automatically. I don't know.
Yeah, isn't that a pain in the ass?
Okay, so here's the other one.
Oh, yeah. Subspecies. There we go. Subspecies. Now, Subspecies was a very popular series with Full Moon.
Well, this is Subspecies 4,
A
Master's Return. So here's a guy, he started off doing low-budget films for theatrical release like Laser Blast. And you want to talk about a guy who rides the waves. I mean,
oh, yeah.
In the end,
he got when that little 3D wave happened back in the 80s.
Yep.
He had Metal Storm out there. He made a direct-to-theater 3D movie, Metal Storm.
I think I saw that.
I did too. It was the same year that Coming at You was the big hit, that Italian spaghetti western in 3D. And Warner Brothers trotted out House of Wax again, which is when I got to finally see House of Wax in 3D. So Charlie Band's he's still got his own Blu-ray label. I mean, any one of you listening to us, you can go on Facebook and you can find Charlie Band's Full Moon label, and he is still repackaging this stuff. In fact, last year, Charlie Band released finally the great late David Allen's long in production film, The Primevals,
which I hardly
was completed. Right. It was started in 1978, completed and released in 2025. He's still at it. So, a story I wanted to share, and I don't remember if you were with me. This is when Kevin Smith was big. Clerks had hit, and he had put it, I think Chasing Amy was new at that point. And coming out from his studio was a film he had not directed called Drawing Flies.
I remember the title.
Right. It was like a Bigfoot comedy that had no Bigfoot in it until the last 2 minutes of the movie, right? But Kevin Smith was at the VSDA trade show that year. I believe we were in Atlantic City, and he was there signing box art for Drawing Flies. He was promoting the film, even though it wasn't his film. It was part of, his creative team had put it out there. And he was doing what we've both described some of the celebrities doing. He was glancing at everybody's name tag. And I was waiting in line. I wanted to get the box signed. And I had two of it wasn't the video in it. It was just the empty box, the video box. That's what he was signing. And I had an extra one for one of my fellow coworkers at First Run Video, who wasn't at the trade show, but was a big Kevin Smith fan. I get up to the table, and Kevin Smith is calling everyone by name. He's looking people's badges, asking where they're from. He looks up at my name tag, and he goes, "Wait, you're Steve Bissette?" And he gets up around the table, comes around, and gives me a big hug and says, "Thank you for Swamp Thing." And all the other retailers are looking at this like, who the fuck is that guy, right? But, it was one of those moments at a trade show. It was like, wow, okay, cool. I mean, Kevin Smith was really connected with people, and he had a context for who I was in another industry and marketplace, right? And made the connection instantly.
Well, as you remember, many years later, he was at the Bushnell in Hartford, and Mary and I went to see one of his evenings with Kevin Smith.
Ah,
And then I stood in line because I'd asked you to put together a care package from the Center for Cartoon Studies.
that's right, right.
So I stood in line and I said, when it came to my turn, I said, I have a question for you. And I'm on a mission. I have a question for you and I have something for you. And he did, no, not that kind of mission. And my question to him was, um, uh, his film Zack and Mary Make a Porno had come
Right.
out, which I love, but it didn't do what it was supposed to do because Hollywood insiders said, well, he's got Seth Rogen, who's red hot. That should have been a huge. So I asked him, how difficult is it to raise money when the previous film doesn't do according to the expectations of people?
Right,
He had a
right.
very good answer. And then I said, I've got a present here from Steve Bissette. And that's when he walked to the edge of the stage and went, the God, Steve Bissette? I said, the very same.
Oh
The very
God.
same. He says, you may approach the bench. So I go up and I tell him what it is, and he was completely gobsmacked. So yes, Kevin Smith is a big fan of yours.
Wow. Well, that was
Maybe we should get him on Cine-Geezers.
I think we should ask him, don't you think, Mike?
Why not?
Don't you? Now, one last thing before we run out of time, I do want to recommend to people. I mean, there's a lot of documentaries out there now about the video era, right?
Yes.
I've purchased and watched, I can't say all of them because I don't know how many there are, but I've purchased and watched a lot of them, well over 6 or 7. I don't think I'm up to a dozen as yet. There's one that I want to recommend to all of you out there. And this is my recommendation. We always do a recommendation at the end of our program. So this is my Blu-ray recommendation to anyone out there who's a Cine-Geezer. Vinegar Syndrome, in their other labels, there's labels they work with, have a title available called Everything to Entertain You, The Story of Video Headquarters. And it is the best one-stop documentary on what this video market that you and I have been talking about, Mike, was. It is the story of Video Headquarters in Keene, New Hampshire, which was one of the largest video stores in New England. And it's a portrait of the retailer who founded and managed Video Headquarters. And that was a man named Ken McAleer. And hello, Ken. It is a terrific documentary. The young filmmaker who made it started it, I believe, while he was still a student at Keene State College. And he worked on this documentary for years, and he managed to pull together vintage footage of TV commercials, radio commercials, interviews, not just with Ken, but with a lot of his former staff members, people who had worked in Video Headquarters. customers from video headquarters. And he frames the documentary with the closing of video headquarters when they had their big blowout sale of Everything Must Go. It is a terrific documentary, and it is, out of all the video era documentaries I've seen, it's not geared toward collectors. Most of the documentaries I've seen are about video collectors.
Right.
This is about the video market. What was it? Where did it come from? And because video headquarters went from the ground zero, it was one of the first superstores in New England, to the very end of the video rental market when Redbox had pretty much taken over. Yep. And Netflix had buried the video market, and streaming was beginning to really kick in, even in rural parts of New England. It is, to my mind, the definitive chronicle that you can go and watch and really get a grasp of what it is you and I have been talking about here today, Mike.
Well, I have been so deep in my work on the book about Alex and Richard Gordon.
The producers, Alex and Richard Gordon.
Yes. I just want to do this for a recommendation. And that is, we talked to Dick Clemenson last time. This is,
oh, yes.
Now, the reason I'm doing this is.
Now, what you're holding up, for those of you, is Little Shop of Horrors number 52.
Yep.
Dedicated completely to Gorgo, but also dedicated significantly to a career overview of the King brothers.
And that's why I'm recommending it. For you may not have, younger people may not have ever heard of the King brothers. It is a fascinating story of three brothers who tippy-toed on the line on various almost criminal activities. And just by a weird turn of events, they wind up producing a film for PRC, which was considered the bottom of the poverty roll basement.
Back in the 40s, right?
And the film did well. It was a cohesive movie, which you cannot say of a lot of PRC movies. And it did well. It did well enough that Monogram, a much better studio than PRC, said, who are these guys? And could we get them to produce for us? Monogram had a collection of independent, semi-independent producers. They used Monogram to finance some of their films. They used Monogram to distribute their films. The most famous of those producers was your friend and mine, Sam Katzman.
Right.
The King brothers came in and did actually, and they have no background, by the way. They didn't write stories. They didn't take movies.
Their background was in slot and coin machines, and
right.
Right.
That's it exactly. And yet they made some very credible movies. In fact, they made the movie Dillinger with Lawrence Tierney that definitely transcended the B movie formula for Monogram. That was a shaky A, as they used to.
It also busted, a restriction, an unspoken restriction of the code at that time, the motion picture production code, that you could not make a film based on actual criminals.
Right.
And they were independent enough that they were like, well, we're going to make this film.
Oh, they also made When Strangers Marry, which was a really accomplished film directed by William Castle years before he was known as a horror guy. They did a lot of stuff. And the piece of the book about the King brothers is an amazing story about, again, guys that you do not expect to have any sort of finger on the pulse of the movie-going audience or production experience. And they were also definitely odd. None of them ever married. The three King brothers never married, and they lived their entire life with their mother. And there's a whole section in the book. The family had come from Eastern Europe, and they used to give their mother a script. They used to read the script in Yiddish. They would translate an English script into Yiddish and read it to mom. And if mom liked it, they would consider producing it. But if mom didn't like it, they would not produce it. Um, it's one of these things that you read and you go, really? This is how some films that were really well thought of. This is who made these films. This is how these films came into
including some Academy Award winners, like The Brave One. You know,
right.
the story of a little Mexican peasant boy and his bull, you know, which won an Academy Award for Best Screenplay, which, by the way, they couldn't give the award to the actual screenplay writer because he was blacklisted
It
at the
was
time.
Dalton Trumbo of Nook.
The King brothers didn't care. They worked with all kinds of blacklisted performers and screenwriters and
And
so
and
on.
and we learned that what happened, which is basically the changing finances of independent motion picture making. They just went into other things. I mean, the last thing they went into was trying to own a casino. I mean,
Right.
Gorgo was one of the last pictures that they made.
And who put it out? Metro Goldwyn Mayer. I mean,
Yeah.
they went from PRC and Monogram up to producing films that studios like MGM were putting into theaters by 1960 and 61.
So I really urge, even if you're not a big Gorgo fan, the story of the King brothers is something that anyone with our sensibilities and
And long overdue in terms of their story not having been told in print. Like
okay, tell
there
them
are
the
no
question you asked
magazine
Richard
articles or
Gordon.
books. Right.
Tell them the question you asked Richard Gordon.
Oh God, yeah. I asked Richard about the King brothers at one point in the context of my curiosity about Gorgo. Richard, by the way, and Mike, we'll do a whole program on Alex and Richard because you introduced me to both of them. And um, Alex moved to America and made his films in California. He
Yeah.
was making films for AIP, like The She Creature and Drag Strip Riot, and for Columbia, he did Underwater City, westerns in the mid '60s, like The Bounty Killer. Richard stayed in. Well, he didn't stay in England. He stayed in England to make motion pictures, and when you got to know him, he had his office in New York City
Yeah,
in Manhattan.
once they came over in 47, and then they split, not split as brothers. They were very, very close and they
Oh,
were
they were close. Yeah, they really
but
were.
Richard decided, I want to stay in New York, and Alex said, I want to go to LA. But Richard produced every one of his films in Great Britain.
Right, and that's the context of my question to Richard. And I asked him what he knew about the King brothers. Do you remember his exact wording? It was like, well, they really love their mother. You know, it was like,
Which sounds really inexplicable, but now we know why.
now we
Why
get it. It's
said
like
that.
for years I was like, what was Richard? And they wouldn't elucidate, neither Richard nor Alex. And Radley Metzger, who was at the table when I asked that question. It was over lunch that we had with you, Marjorie, myself, Radley Metzger, Richard,
Probably.
and Tom Weaver was
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
And Richard just coyly, you know, it was this really sort of sly comment made with a little smile. And Richard was not sarcastic. I never heard Richard's, you know, badmouth anybody, but it was just an odd comment. Well, they really love their mother. It's like, what do I make of that? And Richard, of course, knew the film Gorgo, so he knew I would get, oh, it's a film about motherly love. I mean, Gorgo's mom comes and rescues Gorgo. That's what makes it such an extraordinary monster movie. Um, yeah, boy, now we understand, as you
Yeah,
say, Mike. Now
yeah.
we get it.
I will say that, Richard knew, and in some cases worked with almost every other independent producer to make deals. Richard loved making deals for movies then that would actually be given birth to, you
And
know.
we're still finding out the titles of some of the films that Richard brought to the States and brought to market that
Well,
we didn't think were Richard
yeah,
Gordon films.
he was doing a lot, and part of the reason I'm writing this book is I just want to call out what active filmmakers both of these guys were. But there was only one person he denigrated, and that was Sam Arkoff, co-founder of American
Yeah,
International.
and Alex denigrated him even more. So,
Well, yeah, because he cheated Alex out of a lot
well,
of
the
money.
book I'm going to recommend is I read a lot. I usually read like 5 books a week. The Soul of Wes Craven
Oh, wow.
is a
Okay.
terrific biography. Joseph Madry is the author. Um, it's from an independent publisher, Harker Press. You can get it from harkerpress.com or you can buy it on Amazon. I sprang for the hardcover. This is a terrific biography. It's not one of those overview of his films. There's already been a few books like that about Wes Craven's body of work. This is a biography of Wes Craven, and talk about a independent, scrappy filmmaker who made his way up from, really grassroots. Um, Here's a filmmaker whose parents hadn't allowed him to see movies.
Wow.
So, Wes Craven ended up coming into film production, making adult films, and his big hit, Last House on the Left, in 1972. And it was quite the opposite of his upbringing, his stature as a college professor and a member of academia. It's a remarkable story and really very well written, just a wonderful book. So, The Soul of Wes Craven is my book recommendation to Cine-Geezers out there.
Well, once again, we have burned up some of your time, folks, but I want to tell you, I've enjoyed this conversation, reliving some aspects of the video era that has gone, gone, gone.
Yeah, and we just scratch the surface, but that's what we do at Cine-Geezers. We scratch the surface.
Okay. Well, thanks very much for watching, folks. I'm Mike Dobbs.
I'm Steven Arbisette. We'll see you again, and we'll meet you right back here at Cine-Geezers.